Yeah, it's an American story because we stole it. We were playing an open mic in New Jersey at this place called Lucky Sevens, and there was a band that was supposed to play in that same time slot the next week at the same time, and the DJ, the MC of the night, said, "Up next we have the Lumineers," but we were Wesley Jeremiah was our name at the time, and so we're like, we made a joke of it. We walked on stage. I'm like, "Hey, we're the Lumineers," and they were all instrumental. They were a very different band, it turned out, and then they disbanded. They kind of separated and weren't a band anymore. And I'd kept an eye on them, and it was like, I think we can use that. And then, so it was kind of like the best things are sometimes given to you accidentally.
That was a cool one. I remember many years ago when I still lived in New Jersey, where me and Wes are from, I had this piano idea, I think even like 7 years before we really worked on it. And we worked on it a little bit in the studio together. I remember showing some piano and Wes started singing, "Oh, Ophelia," and we were both like, "That's cool." Yeah. But then we finished the first album, and then we saved it for the second album, and then we worked a lot on it together in this house in Denver. I mean, I feel like even lyrically, a lot of it came together in this room together with me and him. Just, you were sort of like singing stream of conscious lyrics. I don't even think you wrote them down at first, right? And
yeah, we couldn't get the verse for a long time, just the melody, and then, it was like, Jared was just like, da 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 da, and I was like, what was that? It's like, I don't know. And then usually that's a placeholder, we'd say like, shampoo, and I would, like, you fill it with lyrics, but this was just like, it's more, it felt like the whole song was visceral, it was just like instinctual. It wasn't so written out. And so I remember using a lot of the lyrics that we had on our demo, like on a phone, because every time you tried something else, it didn't sound right. And it was just sometimes the first idea can be the best idea. And it took us a while to realize that. We did a lot of different versions of it before we finished it. It's crazy. Yeah. Like you see all your a lot of your idols all in the same room and people you've only seen on TV, and like sort of, it felt so imaginary, and then you're walking. I remember coming down to do our sound check, and Sting and Rihanna were walking up this back stairwell, and we were like, shouldn't there be security here? Like, we're not supposed to be this close to them. So I think things like that made it pretty, we were so, at that point, everything was going so fast that I think it was a blessing because we didn't have that much time to think about it. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And then I remember you lost your jacket, like,
I feel like
stage, like all the madness of it.
Didn't it go? We played Ho Hey and then right into Jack White.
Yeah.
It's weird. I remember like it was yesterday, but also feels like it was 10 years ago, which probably was about 10 years ago. And you remember silly stuff too. I remember they told us to, like, for the rehearsal dress, how you're going to dress. I wore my suspenders, the full get up, and then I saw Rihanna and she was like in pajamas, and I was like, she's in a different class, so she can kind of do what she. I remember seeing Jay-Z walk down the hall, and it's just like,
and Justin Timberlake, and I remember you said Elton John gave you a little, because Jared said, I won't take the story from you, but when he said, like,
we were kind of like running through the crowd, and Elton John, our piano player Stealth, ran into Elton John. And Elton John said something like, "Oh, I love you guys." And then I think I like shoved Stealth out of the way, and I was like, "There's no way you know who we are." And he gave me a little love tap to sort of set the record straight. And he was like, "I love you, mate. You're in the Lumineers. Like, I've been wanting to work with you guys forever." And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, the whole thing was just sort of surreal, and you felt like a visitor in someone else's party or something.
Right.
I feel like a lot of that stuff we drew inspiration from just playing, like busking, we call it, like playing in the street and no amplification. Because it seems like every time your back's against the wall, you remember when you had to get someone's attention with an open heart and like love, not like, I think sometimes people retreat into feeling very angry and defensive when the crowd isn't engaging with them. And I think it taught us like a good way of communicating and trying to transcend that. So when it came to a bigger room, or we were opening for another band, or we just, back in the States we played a Wrigley Field, and it's like a baseball stadium, and it almost like all applies, like where when you start there and you do a lot of that, then you know how to build on that. But sometimes if you skip too much,
Right.
sometimes the slow climb can be the biggest blessing of it, you know, because I think
Totally agree to that.
I was 30 when our first album came out. You were probably 27. So we had so
Yeah.
many years of like being in the shadows, just trying things when no one was judging us. And then by the time we had an opportunity, I think we like knew a little bit about who we were a little more and what we wanted to do with it. So in that way, I think it prepared us a lot. But there is no preparing like when you look out and it's a big crowd. And you know, like tonight we'll be out playing the first time in India, and I think that there's something very overwhelming about it, and sometimes you just go into this. I physically remember how to play this song, but my mind is gone right now because it's a lot. It's like a
Right.
beautiful thing, but it's like
overwhelming.
you're glad that you have a lot of experience, so you can
Right,
just like,
absolutely.
oh my God, like, what is everybody doing here? How are we in India right now? You know,
Yeah.
that kind of feeling.
Maybe Beethoven, see what he's got.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty random. Well, it's interesting that for such a famous composer, nobody's actually ever heard him play the piano because none of his stuff is recorded. So there's all these like interpretations of his music, but it'd be cool to see his piano playing with some vocals, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, it'd be so cool to have seen, you know, Freddie Mercury, and I also like love lyrics a lot. So if someone like Van Morrison or Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen, if you had like our song, like Sleep on the Floor, Cleopatra, but it wasn't out yet, and you showed it and you said, what would you do? Would you change this? Like that
Right.
collaboration would be really exciting because I think deep down we're both just writers at heart. We love writing, and then we learned how to perform, and I feel like in the last few years we're finally like really enjoying it. But for the longest it was like the writing is the passion and the playing is like, oh, what's gonna happen? And now it's like, so it feels better. But I think I would be so curious what some of our heroes would say about choices we made, because it's like 1,000 little choices to write a song. So our friend Isaac Ravi Shankara, he went to Harvard for like studying rocket science, I think, and then ended up making music videos as his career. And so he's really responsible for a lot of the cool ideas and stringing together a lot of those storylines. We had these long conversations, and he was like, what if we did this? And I think that Sleep on the Floor music video in particular is a road trip, a very kind of like getting away, escaping where you feel like you're from and oppressed by. And he did a really beautiful job with it. And I think at the time, I said, oh, that's a cool idea. And then I see the finished product, and it came out so great. He did a great job. Well, I think a good show, because we're all really excited to, anytime we get the chance to play like a first show, it's a very unique headspace, because you're like, you know, we started out 17 years ago just writing in Jared's parents' third floor little space. And if you told us we would be in India in that amount of time, you know, later on, I don't think we would have believed anybody, because we couldn't even play outside of our state, you know. It's like, so
And now you're doing
I think you'll see a lot of energy, and like I don't want to say we'll try harder, but you kind of like, you want to have such a great show because you're so excited to be there. I always like saag paneer and aloo gobi, and my son loves the naan, like the plain naan.
Wow.
I like the garlic naan, but it's such I like how you could mix so often with the food. You can kind of like take a bite of everything, and it like goes. And I know that there's sort of like different regions where it's famous for this, or it's this type of thing. So we also, when we go to London, there's really good Indian food in London. So yeah, it's like amazing. Like we always go because Stealth, our piano player, he found this one place that we always go back to. So it's kind of been, but I didn't try Indian food till I was almost 30. I was like a sheltered, like New Jersey kid. Like I think we just ate like pizza and like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, Philly cheesesteaks.
Yeah.
I love Indian food. I don't know what I'm eating half the time, but it's just, like Wes said, I'm just kind of eating everything, and I love it. I think as artists, the most recent thing you put out tends, whether it's an illusion or the actuality, but I mean, this last album that we just released this year, Brightside, really feels like that. It feels like an album that I don't think we would have been able to make this 10 years ago. I think that there's a lot of stuff that only happens after 10,000 hours of trying something. You know, they say you become a master when you do 10,000 hours of something. But I also feel like as soon as you think you're a master of something is the day that you're going to start to decline. So every time I start, we always start from scratch. We have ideas that are left over from the previous album and then from the subsequent touring. But, you're sort of like climbing up a mountain every time you start a new album. Everything's square one, and you need to find songs that are these like cornerstones that help. It's almost like developing a photo in a darkroom. You start to see it a little bit more day by day. But this album, Brightside, I don't know.
We were like little kids too. I felt
Yeah.
like, even the title track Brightside, we did it in a day, and
Right.
Jared made up a drum beat on the spot, and then, it's just, I think that was very different for us to. We used to beat ideas to death, just like
Ophelia was
ground.
probably, and Ho Hey was a lot of like
hundreds of recorded
months.
versions of it to sound that just okay. You know what I mean? Like,
It sounds amazing. Go on.
but like, I think just being childlike was a big step. I think in Brightside of, like you just alluded to, the minute you start to feel overconfident or confident, you should be more like, stumbling around in the dark instead of
Right.
like, I know the way. That's like that won't produce a very interesting thing. So I think we were just really set up to do something more innocent on Brightside. So a lot of it was just a really bare bones idea, and then we'd record it really fast. And so you can hear that a curiosity, I think, on the record too.
A lot of the studio too is just trying stuff. A lot of times you'll think something's going to work and it won't, and then the things you think that are dumb or
Right.
silly end up working really well.
Yeah.
So every time, like before doing tons of different piano ideas, I think I used to tell myself, this is a final take. There'd be a lot of pressure doing that.
Right.
Now it would be like, it's going to be the sickest idea ever or the worst. Like, it's going to be neither of those. It's just another idea we're going to try. And it's easier said than done, but I think that was evident in the recording process for this album.
I think you went for a stroll this morning.
Yeah, I went for a stroll. I woke up at like 7 because I was sort of jet lagged and just tore.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know where I went. I went all over Pune.
Okay.
I went to that palace with Stealth, where they have it's like Gandhi and his wife kind of just try to read the history and walk through the rooms, and there's cool statues of him, and they talk about like the importance of his wife in his life and
Right,
to the
Kasturba.
country, and like it was pretty.
Yeah.
I think we all commented. It was me, our piano player Stealth, and Lauren, and we were all saying like how, we've always heard the name Gandhi. We didn't know,
What has he done?
all these details, and it got richer and richer the more we moved through each room. So it's always a combination, I feel like, for everybody. I mean, I read this quote about Bob Dylan. It was someone who said, one of the beat poets said that like he put like, he gave real substance to popular music. He elevated what was being sung about and what was being said. And before that, it was a lot more surface, and I think I was always, and it was a better quote than that, but like I was always really enamored with the idea of, it's funny because now we both have kids, and when you watch movies with a kid, if there's humor in it that the parents are laughing at, and then there's also something that the kid is laughing at, that's a very hard thing to do. It's like, it
Right,
speaks
because of
to
the
speaks to every
generation,
age,
yeah.
and like I feel like with Ophelia, there's like a lot of people who they'll send videos when that came out of their kids singing along to it, and they still do, and it's kind of like a little bit of a dark song in some ways, but if you can get a kid to understand it on more of like this primal level, but then an adult can, but they can also think about it, and to me that was an interesting idea about music, is that you can kind of sneak past people's defenses and just get right in there without them even realizing it. It's like a Trojan horse to make you feel, because a lot of what I think we've faced over the last few years with going through COVID, but also with technology and everything, is there's a lot of, especially in America, it feels like, I don't know how it is here, but like there's a lot of isolation and there's numbness because you're scared and you shut off. So
Right.
people just want to feel, and music is like the fastest way I've ever felt to get goosebumps or to cry or to laugh or to, put your arm around a stranger or something. It has this weird magical quality. So I was always enamored with that idea of trying to like give it levels, give it meaning, and it doesn't have to just be clever. It I can have something beyond that. Well, visually, Jer wears the same thing on stage. It's probably the most consistent thing we have. But I would say, musically, I mean, I think one of the things that we tried to do was not force things, if that makes sense. You know, like,
keep it raw.
yeah, like if we like something, just do that. Our friend one time said he was a Berkeley grad, you know, famous musical school, and he was very accomplished in avant-garde music. And he said, Joe said to us, he's like, if you like G chords, just play G chords, but like mean it. You know, that's like the attitude is like, if you love it, if you're cooking something, if you're writing music, people will sense that. And if you're just doing it to impress someone, it's not the same. So I think we've slowly evolved. And if you listen to album 1 and then you would put on a song from album 4, which happens in our set, like they'll get jumbled up. And I think they work, but they're really different. I like that we did that, but we weren't like, well, we're a synth band now. There's people who could do that, like Radiohead or something where they dramatically change, or the Beatles did it. Bob Dylan went electric. There's these big moves, but I think for us, it's been nice to feel like we're following our passions and our heart. Like, if we want to put an instrumental song on, put an instrumental song on. It's not to like, it's because we loved it and we thought it was cool. It's not any other reason. And to have that freedom to do that, I think is pretty cool. I think people assume because you had a big song, that was your intention. And we were like, whether it's Ho Hey or, I remember our label heard Ophelia and they were like, there's no guitars in it. And they were really nervous. We were like, yeah, isn't that cool? It's piano. Like, and then afterwards they're like, it's piano. You know? once it took hold of people. So I think it's we've had a lucky path in that way of just like being able to follow our own instincts with it and not try to like please someone imaginary, you know, out there.
Right, absolutely.
There's 2 songs. I mean, it's 1 song really, but it's technically 2. Remington into Reprise. I think it finishes the album, right? And those were actually written quite fast. I remember Remington is like almost 4 ideas, almost 5. I mean, it's like a lot of different ideas that is sort of the sibling track to Reprise. And we usually play that later in the set, but whenever we play it, it's just so fun. There's not one moment where I'm just like, I don't know, just every second of, they're new songs, but I think there's something about the way they unfold live. It's just so fun and free, liberating. I don't know, I can't describe it. But.
Yeah, I like Brightside because we don't really have songs that start out, we don't have a ton of songs that start out with big drums at all.
Correct.
So it's like such a joy, and Sleep on the Floor is the same way.
True.
It's like, we have so little of that, so when that happens, that's so fun to play live. But I would say off the new record, Brightside, we open our show with that, and it's a special moment because the fans are used to, I think, things being quiet, and then they get bigger, and then they drop down, and this is just from the start, you know. I wish we wrote faster. It's usually like a few years between albums. This last one went fast.
Yeah, that was nice.
Right.
I think it's changed into something that I maybe before didn't realize, which is that we trust ourselves. We probably like did it long enough where there was more trust in what we were doing, but I would wish that upon anybody, is that you get to a point where you can make something and your instinct, you can trust that instead of just being like, I can't be right. It's always been bad. You know, it's Monday, by Tuesday I'm going to hate this. Like, that's what happens in the beginning. You get really excited. And I would say the regret in the beginning was we would do a song 100 times and then go back to often like an early one. And I heard Tom Petty did that one time. He broke his hand because he punched a wall because he was so mad because he had already recorded the version like 30 takes before, but he thought it wasn't good. And then he went back, he's like, what's this one? They're like, that was the first one. And I think, you know, just that would be regretful if you you know, you looked past something really beautiful because you were blind to it. You're like, you know, numb to it.
That'd be great.
That would, we could actually like have days between and see more of this place and be tourists.
That's right.
Get a taste of each region, you know. That would be amazing. I mean, we didn't expect it. It's been a big, cool reception just on how many people have bought tickets for this festival. So I think it's a good sign that, because we would love to come back. It's like, it's been
I met 4 fans today that recognized me, and they drove 8 hours
Are you serious?
to come to the festival. I don't know where they drove from. I forget where they said, but I was like, wow, that's insane. That's dedication to drive 8 hours in any country.
So cool.
Really cool, yeah.
94.3
One world, your station.
Radio 1.